Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 725. And today's date is July 24th, 2015. And the title of this episode is A Partial No-Fly Zone Has Been Established in Syria for the Next Offensive. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Europe, they continually tell us that there's a recovery. They did back in 2013, 2014. They told us that it's about to take off, and we've never seen it. And right now, in the beginning of 2015, they told us that, yes, the Eurozone is in a recovery, but now we're getting word the recovery is slowing down. It lost momentum. Business activity in the 19-member Eurozone has now eased, and they're looking into the future and they're saying, ooh, the second half of the year doesn't look too good. Market right now is saying that the manufacturing and service sectors fell month on month to 53.7 in July, down from 54.2 in June. And we can see that the entire economy, the private Western Central Bank economy, is starting to fall apart now. I mean, we've seen the stock market, it has been declining for a couple days now. I think it's down about 600 points. But again, the stock market is not the indicator that the economy is falling apart. That is the last indicator telling us that, yes, everything is done. But we have been seeing economic indicators showing us that this economy is completely falling apart. I mean, we're getting information now that there are more layoffs on the way. We see Capital One, they're going to be laying off people. Newport News Shipbuilding, 1,500 people. John Deere in Illinois, 160. We see Weatherford International, 1,000 more layoffs. Wells Fargo, 91. Hagen, 800 in South California. Anglo American, 6,000 worldwide. IBM has just reported, they're going to be laying off people. We don't know the count just yet. Qualcomm, I reported a couple days ago, they were laying off 4,000. They upped it to 4,700. This is continually ongoing, where companies now are just laying off people. Where, again, are they going to get these jobs? Now, if all these companies are laying off or reporting that they will be laying off, why are the initial jobless claims continually going down? It makes no sense. You're trying to tell me that all these people found jobs in a matter of a week? I know when I went out looking for jobs, you put out your resumes, you go in for a couple interviews. Sometimes it takes 2-3 months to get that job. Some jobs are a little bit faster, but on average, it does take a while. And especially in the summer months, most of the key people are on vacation. And there's no one to bring you in and interview you. So, is this for everybody? No. But what we're seeing right now is a complete manipulation of all the unemployment numbers to convince us that we are fine. We see U.S. manufacturing. PMI remains stubbornly stuck at 19-month lows, unable to bounce back from the bad weather, the port strikes, and everything else they used as excuses. We see employment for manufacturing tumbled. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing a collapse of the system. And every time we report and every time we follow all this information, we see that, things are getting worse. Now, a couple days ago, or maybe it's a week already, they told us existing home sales, they're skyrocketing. But of course, when you look at mortgage applications and you look at where all these existing home sales were being sold, they're only in certain select areas. And most of these homes were paid in cash, not by mortgages, which is hedge funds, investment companies, foreign investors. And now we get information that new home sales completely imploded on itself. And this kind of correlates to what the builders have been telling us, that traffic is drying up. And the new home sales have declined to the lowest level since November of 2014. Once again, the National Association of Realtors is back to its old tricks. The previous data was revised dramatically lower as June data missed expectations by the most in a year. So again, this is what they do. They tell you everything is fine, and then they go backwards in time and they revise the information. And they hope nobody's looking. The West region saw new home sales collapse by 17%. What we're seeing here right now is a complete collapse of real estate. And this is how it started back in 2007, 2008. And you have to remember, this real estate market is completely controlled by the central banking system, not by the people. It was not created by the people. It's not an open real estate market where everyone's out there getting mortgages, buying homes. The bubble was created by the central bankers. They told banks to keep homes off the market that are foreclosed on. They gave free money to investment hedge funds, and foreign investors came in. They purchased these homes in cash to convince everyone that the home market is on the rise once again because prices are going up. But we're starting to see that this isn't true anymore. Because when I look around the United States, I see very strange things occurring. Houses are on the market longer and longer, and they're lowering the prices. Prices are coming down. And this is the hot season for real estate. If new homes are struggling right now, what do you think is going to happen when we leave the summer months? The entire thing is going to come crashing down. And they know this. They realize that all of this manipulated, illusionary statistical numbers they give us can't hold up anymore. 57% of the American people feel that this economy is getting worse. Well, I feel it too. I'm sure you do. We see the world trade data is showing us that something is about to happen. Could be the next economic crisis. I mean, copper right now is used as an indicator to determine the economic conditions and where we are headed. We saw this in 2008 when the price of copper started crashing big time in the months leading up to the stock market implosion. Well, now copper is crashing once again. The price of copper plunged again on Wednesday. Now it is the lowest it has been since the last financial crisis. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing all these economic indicators, and they're conflicting with the statistical illusionary numbers that the government continually puts out. I mean, this is what happened in 2008 when they told us everything is fine, everything is sustained, contained. They used all the key words in there to make you feel good. We're not forecasting any type of recession. And of course, they left the important news out about Bear Stearns, what was going on with Lehman, that all these corporations and banks needed to be bailed out. The subprime securities weren't AAA. Well, we're seeing the same thing happen once again. Wall Street's Wolf Richter says this isn't stagnation or sluggish growth. This is the steepest and longest decline in world trade since the financial crisis. Unless a miracle happened in June, and miracles are becoming exceedingly scarce in this sector, world trade will have experienced its first back-to-back quarterly contraction since 2009. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing the beginning of the slide into a major collapse. Now, of course, they can keep the statistical numbers going. They can continually manipulate them. They can keep us in an illusion. And as long as they keep the stock market being pumped up, people will believe that everything is fine. but it looks like they're having a little bit of trouble trying to keep this market up. Actually, it's Friday, and I'm surprised with the high frequency trading, the plunge protection team. They're having a very rough time keeping the market up. Last couple days, it slid. I mean, if it slid faster, I'm sure they would throw the kill switch once again to stop it and pretend that there was some type of glitch. We see that the U.S. is going to have trouble paying the disability benefits in full by 2016. The trustees of the Social Security have predicted that Disability Trust Fund would fall short of paying money to residents in the last quarter of 2016. Most likely it's probably going to end up before that period. And that means that 10.9 million disabled workers and children within the U.S. receiving these benefits, they're not going to receive them. And this is going to be a problem. So what they're looking to do is they're looking to take the Social Security Retirement Fund and use that money to fund the disability payments. Well, there's nothing left in the Social Security Fund. They're just creating money and using that to fill in for the payments of Social Security. So they're just taking money from here, putting it over there, then they have to move it from here to there. That's all they are doing. We see the Fed accidentally released dovish confidential market moving forecasts, and they blame a glitch. Yes, all of a sudden this glitch released the information. And it seems like it's hard to believe that there was a code glitch and this information was published on the website. It seems a little odd because their information that they leaked, they were showing like GDP at 2.31 for 2015, 2.38% in 2016. I think it was purposely let out to see if they can push the market back up because they saw a couple days of the market crashing. And they said, we need something to pick this back up because we're having a very hard time with the high frequency trading, the market plunge, the plunge protection team, and it seems like the market continually is now falling and we need to do something. And every time they let information out, it's never accidental. It is on purpose. There's a plan behind it. Because I cannot believe they had this information which was only for their internal use because of a code glitch. It was published. You know how difficult that is to publish the information with a code glitch on a website? It makes no sense whatsoever. We see Russia's national rating agency may consider entering European markets in 2018 and 2019. And we know that China and Russia are creating their own national rating agencies. They're moving away from the private Western Central Bank rating agencies. And we see the BRIC Bank, well, they're getting ready to issue their first loan. And their first loan most likely will be in the beginning of 2016. And their loan will be in yuan, not dollars. Bypassing the dollar completely. And after the first loan, there'll be many more, and it will all be done in China's currency. Now, I talked about GMOs a couple reports ago, and we see that the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Act of 2015. And like I always said, every single time the government creates a bill and it says something about safe, patriotic, Affordable Care Act, it's always the opposite. I mean, safe and accurate food labeling? Well, if it's safe and it's accurate, then you got to let me know what is in the GMO foods. But this law prohibits states from issuing mandatory labeling laws for foods containing genetically modified organism. The bill H.R. 1599 requires a national standard for labeling laws related to GMOs. Yes, they want to make sure they leave out all the important information, because you know the corporations are controlling this bill. And they're all out there saying that, well, there's no credible evidence about how GMOs can affect your health whatsoever. There's nothing out there. We don't see any of it. Well, there are a lot of countries, I think there's like 67 countries, that will not allow GMO foods in their country. And they've done an extensive amount of testing. And they found, in some cases where a lot of the GMO food contains glyphosate, and they found that it causes cancer. It's associated with birth defects, skin diseases, respiratory, neurological disease. And we see a lot of countries have done experiences. But what's very interesting about all of this is that the FDA in 1992 declared that genetically modified crops generally recognized as safe, as long as the producers say they are. So the people, the corporations I should say, who are creating these products, as long as they say it's safe, it's fine. We did the testing and we say it's safe. So the corporations that are selling this product are the ones doing the testing. So why in the world would they ever say the product is not safe? Now, if they've done testing and they have the results, they need to take these results and give it to other scientists so they can reproduce it. But they don't want to do that. They don't want to give this information out because they know if they do, the scientists will not be able to reproduce their results. And they're telling us there is no problems with this type of food on a long-term period. Well, didn't they say that about asbestos? Didn't they say that about the chemical 7 that they use to kill bugs on plants? Didn't they say this about many of the products? And now we find out that, yeah, all these products caused cancer. There's problems, even medications. This is why you see those commercials on TV with lawyers out there saying that, oh, if you are exposed to asbestos, if you're exposed to this, you might have a lawsuit. Because how do they know if it has an effect on your body? First of all, GMOs, this is the code of life that they're fooling with. They have no clue unless they let it go for hundreds of years. Because 20 years from now, you're going to find out, yeah, this did have an effect. Just like when you look back in time, we see other chemicals. And this is not even a chemical. This is the code of life. They're fooling around with the DNA of plants. We understand with Obamacare that Obamacare is not a benefit to the people. And we can see that insurance companies were behind the bill that became law, which is the Affordable Care Act, which we find out that it's not affordable whatsoever. We find out that the premiums are continually going up. But you can see part of their agenda here. One, of course, as I discussed many times, is to tax the people. But the other agenda is to combine large and small insurance companies into a few, just like they did with the banking system. Because this way, they can control the industry. And if you have 15 insurance companies and they take them and make them into 5 insurance companies, do you really think premiums are going to be going down? Or are they going to go up? Well, I've never seen them go down. I've only seen them go up. Same thing with auto insurance. I've only seen it go up. It's mandatory for everybody. That means there's no competition. Why would there be competition? You have to get it someplace. So if all the insurance companies keep the prices the same, that's what you see. And we see right now that Anthem Inc. said on Friday it would buy Cigna. We see also that Aetna agreed to buy Humana. So we can see right now all of these companies are combining into a few. to actually have a monopoly on the industry, to keep the premiums high and to continually raise them. This is part of their agenda, and this is exactly what they're doing. Now we see there was another shooting in Louisiana, and it was done in a movie theater, and it looks like the person who did the shooting is now dead. It seems like he had mental problems, probably come out that he's on some type of SSRI. We can see right now that a lot of this information coming out is kind of sketchy right now, saying that he was tweeting, that he was part of a group that did not like the government. He saw a collapse coming in the economy, and he just, all of this seems like it's a complete setup. The man was 59 years old. But what's very interesting about all of this is that Louisiana has very lax gun laws. And there are a lot of bills that are ready to be signed by the governor, Bobby Jindal. So one of the bills is House Bill 466, which permits cities, parishes, local public schools, boards to provide elementary school students with age and grade appropriate firearm accident prevention and safety instruction, which would be included in the curriculum. And the program is called Eddie Eagle Gun Safe Program, which was developed by the NRA. We see another bill excludes some private property from local shooting ordinances. Senate Bill 133, sponsored by Barry Peacock, excludes certain private properties from local shooting ordinances in heavily populated areas. The exception only applies to private properties larger than 5 acres with no more than one single-family residence. And I'm just curious that these bills are sitting there, and I'm wondering, like with all these mass shootings, we have a couple things going on. The MO is always the same. This person is mentally unstable. They're on some type of medication. They end up shooting up a certain area. They end up dead. And there always seems to be some type of legislation. And another part is it normally takes place in a gun-free zone. So we can see at this point in time, there are other things going on here, because as we can see, and I see Obama out there today, that one of the things that frustrates him is how people can't see that we need to take all the weapons away from everybody, that guns are very dangerous. And we can see they're getting desperate at this time, because we can see all these shootings are starting to ramp up right now, because they realize that this system is completely falling apart and it's accelerating. And we've been following this for quite a while. And this is exactly what we're seeing right now. Now, out in Ukraine, we see the Kiev government right now is looking for ways to have natural gas supplied to their country. They cut off the supplies from Russia. They didn't pay. This is why Russia shut it down. We see now that Ukraine is out there looking and asking other countries to help supply natural gas. Ukraine asked Belarus to review the possibility of gas transit from the Baltic states to Ukraine, because they realize once they start with this offensive, they want to make sure they have natural gas, because this will bring them into the winter. And right now they're fine. It's summer. They have natural gas in their underground tanks. But as they move into the winter and the battle goes on, they want to make sure that they have natural gas being pumped into the country, because they don't want to rely on Russia, because guess what? This is the country they will be provoking. We see the French lawmakers, they visited Crimea. So 10 French lawmakers came into Crimea, and of course Ukraine said, oh, those French lawmakers, they are no longer allowed in Ukraine. So they went to see Crimea, and they said, oh, Crimea is under strict occupation from Russia, people aren't free. And they spent 2 days there. And they walked around freely, they looked around, and they saw no occupation. They said people are free. We have seen that it is a peaceful region. People live in peace. So all those rumors and everything that was been said is turning out to be false, which we kind of knew. Now, what's very interesting about all of this is that the United States continually says Russia is in Ukraine. Russia needs to remove its troops. Russia, Russia, Russia. But what we see is the United States, they have military advisors in Ukraine, military soldiers in Ukraine, training the National Guard. We see the CIA, FBI in Ukraine. Well, the FBI is going to help train the police force in Odessa. And guess what? The U.S. is going to finance the training of all the new law enforcement personnel in Odessa. So the U.S. is financing all this. The U.S. has the FBI, CIA, military advisors, military soldiers. They're supplying Kiev with weapons, loaning them money, giving them aid. And Russia needs to get out. And they're predicting that they can't make the disability payments in 2016. Why in the world is the U.S. financing the training of the law enforcement in Odessa? Wouldn't that money be better spent here in the United States to help the people? But again, the central bankers are running everything. They need to keep their agenda. They need to push on, spread the debt, because that is their product. And we can see the more countries they capture, the more countries they can push debt on. And this is exactly what we see. We see Ukraine is building up troops on the border of Transnistria. It looks like they're building up and placing 7,000 troops on the border. We see very strange things occurring right now in Ukraine. We see the right sector causing problems inside Ukraine. We see radar systems being shipped into Ukraine from the United States, which will be towed around by the Humvees, which are supplied by the United States. We see the United States is bringing in more military advisors to train the National Guard. We see the FBI is training the police in Odessa. We see an announcement today that the United States government is going to send additional advisors to train the regular army now inside Ukraine. And all of this training will go throughout the autumn and maybe longer. And we see at this point in time that Ukraine is being built up with forces, with training, with weapons. And the Russian media right now is reporting that Ukraine is planning a new military mobilization. They're saying that there are documents that were intercepted. They're saying the new mobilization plan is going to increase the strength of the Ukrainian army by recruiting more troops, and they're going to be drafting those children, and the age of the children they'll be drafting is 16 and above. The new plan will also extend the service term for an indefinite period. So all troops are going to be affected by that. Secondary schools and institutions of higher education must submit a list of students who are between the ages of 16 and 22. So what are they really planning here? It seems that they are getting ready for an offensive. Now, will it come this August? Maybe. It seems like they're preparing for this. Will it start in September? Maybe. We don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but we see that all indicators are pointing to this offensive. And we don't know exactly when the start date's going to be. We don't know what the event is going to be when it kicks off. But we've been looking at this for quite a while. And when we put all the pieces together, we start to see a picture of what is happening there. Why do they need all this training? Why do they need these weapons? If nothing is going to happen and they're going to let the southeastern people be, they're going to let Crimea be, there's no war occurring in the western part of Ukraine. There's no reason for all of this. But there's always a reason why they are doing this. We see the U.S. Army right now calls for the fast track to upgrade strikers. Why? Because they need them to fight Russia. U.S. Army officials are pressing for a massive outlay of money to upgrade the Stryker armored vehicle, insisting they need to fast track it. They need upgrades on it. They want to place 30mm cannons on top of these Strykers because they're expecting a full-scale war against Russia. Now, of course, they're using this as propaganda to get those who are holding the purse strings to say, yes, here is the money. We see Russia attacking. Here's the money. Yes, go ahead and do what you need to do. We see out in the Middle East, out in Yemen, it has been 4 months since the beginning of the aggression by Saudi Arabia, which is orchestrated by the United States government central bankers. And what have they achieved in the last 4 months? Nothing. They have achieved absolutely nothing. You know what they did? They killed about 5,000 people. Most of them are civilians. They're creating humanitarian crisis in Yemen. And nothing has been accomplished. Actually, we see this in every single country. We see it in Yemen. We see it in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Ukraine. That's it. They destroy every single country they go into. And of course, they're trying to make the people suffer enough so they can say, you know what, bring back the puppet government. We're sorry. They're being punished. But we're starting to see these airstrikes, and they're starting to slip into Saudi Arabia itself. The Yemen fighters, the Houthis, have been pushing the Saudis back, and they're hitting into Saudi Arabia now. And this is going to be a problem. Now, we see in Syria, things are really starting to ramp up right now, and we're seeing a lot of propaganda. And I notice the corporate media is continually pushing the propaganda that Syria, Assad, used chemical weapons. And when they were cleaning up all the sarin gas weapons, Assad was hiding chemical arms in mobile units. And they were camouflaged to make it look like they're delivery trucks. And they don't think they got all of the sarin gas. So we can see what is going on right now. We see they're continually using propaganda, trying to build a case up where they didn't get rid of all the sarin gas, and Assad was purposely hiding these sites, these mobile sites, from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. And then they're saying, and they're attaching this to that story, saying that the Syrian doctor testified before Congress, showed the photos of citizens who were foaming at the mouth, who were poisoned. But again, this is the aftermath. It doesn't show who did it. It's almost like in a court of law, and I've said this before, you show a dead body and you point a finger and said he did it or she did it. It doesn't show you who did it. It just shows you what happened. This is the after effect. In between is the evidence leading up to that. This is what they're always missing. They're always missing the connection. Because you have to ask yourself, why in the world would Assad, while fighting a force, attack his own people? It's like saying George Washington, while he was fighting the British, he decided to poison his own people. It makes no sense. And if we go back to 2013, when they said he used sarin gas, Assad and Putin invited the UN Security Council into Syria to inspect the chemical attacks. And at the same time, there was a chemical attack. I mean, does that make any sense? Why would you do that? It's like inviting the police into the bank while you're robbing the bank. Does that make any... Why would you do that? It makes no sense whatsoever. And this is what they're trying to convince us of. This is the propaganda coming out, right? Because they're trying to make a case of why we need to remove Assad. Now, I see all over the place that the Syrian opposition groups, the Free Syrian Army, the paid mercenaries, are talking about how they're going to talk and have an agreement. Now, when you read it, it seems like, look, they're trying to come up with a peace deal to end the civil war. But then you realize, no, this is two different factions of paid mercenaries deciding to join forces to go up against Assad. This is not going to stop the civil war in there. First of all, there is no civil war. It's a paid mercenary war, orchestrated by the United States government central bankers. And they both agreed that there could be no place for Assad. He must step down in any type of deal that will end the country's bloody conflict. So they see no role for Assad whatsoever, not even in the transitional body once they take over the country. So they're already set on that. They're getting rid of Assad. Well, actually, that's never changed. It's always been the same. We see Turkey right now scrambled fighter jets, and they've launched them out. They launched attack on ground forces into Syria. Of course, they said Islamic State was in Turkey. They had a false flag event, and now we need to go into Syria. Well, we know that Erdogan pulls those tricks many, many times. Going back a year or two, he snuck military people into Syria. They had rocket launchers, and they were supposed to fire the rocket launchers back into Turkey from Syria, and he was going to blame it on Syria and saying, okay, this is the reason we need to go in and attack Syria. But what happened is his plan kind of got messed up. It was botched, and it was leaked all over YouTube and Twitter. He tried to ban YouTube and Twitter, but that didn't work out too well because it got out. And we can see right now they're doing the same exact thing. And we're seeing that Turkey right now is closing a lot of its borders, reinforcing its borders. And they're saying that Turkey needs no permission to go into Syria. Doesn't need approval. It doesn't need any permission from anyone to coordinate military operations in Syria. So basically, Turkey is saying we can invade Syria whenever we want. And they're basically securing the Syrian border with Turkey. And what they're doing is they're setting up a partial no-fly zone. Now, we talked about this a couple months ago, where this is what they wanted to do. And it looks like Obama, Erdogan, they discussed it and they said, okay, now is the time. So Turkish military sources reported Friday that the U.S. and Turkish air forces had established a partial no-fly zone, 50 kilometers deep inside Syria and 90 kilometers in length. It covers all of Idlib, the northern part of Syria, up to Aleppo. U.S. planes equipped with bombs and missiles will be able to use the airbase in Turkey. And guess what? Assad's planes will not be able to enter the no-fly zone. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing a build-up to the next offensive. They've already established a partial no-fly zone. Soon it will be a complete no-fly zone that will cover a lot more of the country. Well, didn't we see this in Libya? Didn't we see this in Iraq? We're seeing the same thing occur. And all of this is being done one step at a time, very slowly. Nothing happens overnight. We mentioned this months ago, and here we are again today. It's happening once more. And we're approaching August, when Congress goes on vacation. And we saw back in 2013 the sarin gas false flag. We saw 2014 the Islamic State move into Iraq and Syria And now here we are in 2015. We see more information about the Islamic State, how they're going to be using drones to drop bombs on sporting events, music festivals. And like I said, when we move forward and they're ready to give the green light, we will see events occur across the country. And they're saying that the Islamic State could use drones to bomb all of these different type of events. And they would be able to time it together to make it happen all at once. And of course these drones are small enough, they have cameras, they can film the whole thing. And we understand that the reason for this is because the entire system is falling apart. And from everything that we've seen, all the economic indicators, what is happening around in Europe, we see that things are really starting to fall apart. And we're starting to notice that things are ramping up. And this is why all of us, we need to continually prepare for this. I mean, look at the Greek people. One day, they're sitting there, the banks are open, and they knew something was happening. Now, they could have waited. They didn't have to take their money out of the banks. They didn't have to store food. But they knew eventually all of this was going to be shut down. And guess what? It was. And they knew capital controls were going to be in effect. Well, we know that this is going to happen. We know we need to be prepared. I mean, if you're continually buying food, do not stop. If you're buying water, do not stop. If you're buying medical supplies, toiletries, you need to continue. If you haven't done any of these things and you're worried, nervous, well, I would use other companies, something like lifereliance.com. They put everything together for you. They have food storage, water storage, bug out bags, seeds, first aid. You name it, they have it, and they put everything together all at once so you can get it all at once. But if you've been doing this all along and you've been buying in bulk and you've been supplying, building up your supplies, continue to do this. You need to have cash on hand, just like the Greek people, just like the Cyprus people. Because we know it's coming. And I rather see everyone prepared for it than not prepared. Can you imagine if you were one of those people who was not prepared, they didn't have cash, they didn't have food, and all of a sudden capital controls were put in effect, banks were closed down? What would you do? And we know when this collapse hits, it's going to be terrible. People around this country, and we know a lot of them who aren't prepared. We try to talk to them, but they just don't listen. They're going to be scrambling around, running to the shelves of the stores, trying to get the supplies they need, trying to get their money out of the bank. And of course, once capital controls are in effect, how much can you actually take out? And what can you actually buy? I mean, think about it. It's going to be very, very difficult because they want to keep the money in the banks. Because eventually they have to use the bail-ins. Because we know the banks are insolvent. We know they're going to go inside. This is why they created the bail-in documentation. So they can go inside the banks because they realize there are no more bailouts. The government will no longer bail out the central banking system. So they are prepared, and you need to be prepared. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.